You've always been told the world rewards the good man. The one who smiles first, who forgives quickly, who keeps his hands clean no matter what. Society whispers it like an unbreakable gospel. Kindness is strength. Honesty is the ultimate power. And if you just wait patiently with a pure heart, life will eventually crown you with the respect and success you deserve. But late at night, when the house falls completely silent and the mirror refuses to lie, you feel it deep in your chest. That quiet, persistent ache, that subtle sense that something important is missing from your life. You've watched ordinary men, guys who seem no different from you, suddenly shift the entire temperature in a room with nothing more than their presence. You've seen dangerous men walk straight through fire and chaos completely untouched, almost as if the world itself bends around their will. And somewhere inside you, a small voice keeps asking the same painful question: why them? Why does it always seem to be them and never me? What if the difference has never been about luck, genetics, money, or even raw talent? What if it's something far quieter, far older, and far more precise? A single ancient mindset that has remained hidden in plain sight for over 500 years. A way of seeing reality, of reading people, and of moving through the world that quietly turns the most average man into someone dangerous, and transforms the already dangerous man into someone completely unstoppable. Vamos a descubrirlo. You know the feeling all too well. You walk into a meeting, a party, or even a simple gathering with friends. You stay polite, you listen carefully, you nod at all the right moments, trying to show that you're approachable and safe. Yet somehow the conversation still bends around you like water flowing effortlessly around a rock in the river. Then he steps in, a guy roughly the same height, wearing similar clothes, maybe even less impressive when you look at him on paper, and suddenly the whole energy in the room shifts. Heads turn without thinking. Voices naturally drop a little lower, shoulders straighten. Even the laughter in the air starts to feel earned rather than just polite. You force a smile anyway, telling yourself it's nothing important, just your imagination playing tricks, but deep inside something quietly fractures. A small crack appears in the armor you've been carefully building for years, and that silent crack is exactly where this entire story begins. Most men spend their whole lives desperately trying to patch that crack. They add more kindness, more effort, more constant signals that say, "I'm one of the good guys." Society drilled this lesson into you from childhood. If you just keep polishing your surface, shining brighter with goodness and patience, the world will finally notice your true worth and reward you. But Machiavelli, writing 5 centuries ago in the heart of Renaissance Italy, would have laughed bitterly at that naive idea. He observed princes and power firsthand, and he knew a harsher truth. People don't actually follow the man who is genuinely good. They follow the man who appears good, right up until the precise moment he decides it no longer serves him to keep pretending. You've felt this painful contradiction many times in your own life. Remember the moments when you swallowed your real anger just to keep the peace in the room, only to watch the guy who spoke his mind directly walk away with the promotion or the opportunity. Think about those long nights when you lay awake replaying conversations in your head, wondering why your honest words landed so flatly, while his carefully chosen half-truths somehow sounded like profound wisdom. That lingering discomfort isn't a sign of weakness. It's actually the very first honest signal your deeper mind is sending you, trying to wake you up. Carl Jung would describe this as your shadow quietly knocking on the door of your conscious awareness. It's the hidden part of you that society trained you to lock away since you were young. The part that instinctively understands power is rarely given freely. It must be taken with intelligence and timing. Nietzsche would frame it as the will to power speaking softly in your ear, reminding you that you were never meant to live as a passive spectator in your own existence. You were meant to shape it. And right now, as my voice reaches you, you're not simply hearing words on a screen. You're feeling that crack inside you slowly widening. Because somewhere deep down, you already sense the uncomfortable reality. The men who make you feel a little uneasy, a little on edge, are often the very same men the world instinctively respects and follows the most. But here's the part almost no one dares to tell you openly. That subtle fear you experience when you watch them operate, it isn't really about them at all. It's about the version of yourself that has been sleeping for far too long, waiting for permission to finally rise. Every truly dangerous man you've ever admired or feared started life as a completely ordinary boy who got hurt in a way that taught him a lesson most of us still refuse to accept. It might have been the first time a parent or friend broke an important promise without explanation, or the painful moment he realized his father's quiet strength came from strategic silence rather than loud displays of emotion. Or perhaps the day the girl he truly cared about chose the guy who never waited for permission and simply took what he wanted. In that exact instant, something ancient and primal woke up inside him. It wasn't blind rage or childish revenge. It was something much colder and far more calculated, a clear internal decision. From this day forward, I will never again leave myself completely at the mercy of someone else's moods, whims, or betrayals. Machiavelli named this quality virtù, not moral virtue in the religious sense, but the raw, practical skill of bending fortune and circumstances to your own will when necessary. He studied the ruthless princes of his time and noticed a pattern. The ones who survived chaos and rose to power didn't sit around waiting for the world to become fair or kind. Instead, they studied human nature like a predator studies the direction of the wind and the movement of prey. And the powerful truth is this: you already carry that exact same potential quietly burning inside you at this very moment. Take a second and think back honestly. Recall the very first time you tasted real control. Perhaps it was the moment you finally said no, when everyone around you expected an automatic yes. Notice how the atmosphere in the room shifted almost instantly, how their eyes changed. That small rush of energy you felt wasn't mere ego stroking. It was your ancient survival brain finally remembering what it feels like to be the one who sets the rules instead of endlessly following them. Carl Jung saw this awakening as the shadow archetype finally stepping out of darkness and into the light of awareness. It's the hidden side of your personality that holds every impulse society labeled as unacceptable. The natural desire to lead, to influence, to protect what is yours without constant apology. Most men waste decades running away from this part of themselves out of fear or guilt. The dangerous ones, they learn to befriend it, to understand it, and eventually to direct it with precision. But here's the unexpected twist that completely changes how you see yourself. The predator inside isn't born from cruelty or some dark flaw in your character. He is born in the precise moment a man finally stops pretending the world is inherently safe and just, and begins preparing himself mentally and emotionally for the moments when it clearly isn't. You can feel that quiet stirring happening inside you right now as you listen, can't you? That calm but insistent inner voice gently asking, what if I finally stopped playing so small? What if I started moving differently? That voice isn't something evil or dangerous to fear. It's actually the first truly honest conversation you've allowed yourself to have in a very long time. The mask you wear isn't about being fake or dishonest in a cheap way. It is deeply strategic. One of Machiavelli's most misunderstood observations wasn't the famous line about being feared rather than loved. It was something even sharper and more useful. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. Your brain is biologically wired to make snap judgments about faces and body language in roughly 0.07 seconds. Long before your conscious mind forms a complete thought, your amygdala has already quietly decided whether someone feels safe or represents a potential threat. The man who learns to master this lightning-fast moment of human perception gains an almost unfair advantage. He becomes truly unstoppable in social and professional arenas. He deliberately wears the outward mask of a calm, reasonable, even warm and friendly person, all while keeping something far more powerful, the wolf on an extremely short, well-controlled leash. You've witnessed this pattern countless times in everyday life. Think of the boss who always greets everyone with a warm smile and friendly words, yet somehow every person in the office instinctively knows that crossing him would be professional suicide. Or the quiet friend who almost never raises his voice, yet he consistently ends up getting exactly what he wants from every situation. These men don't waste energy performing exaggerated niceness. They have learned to weaponize it with surgical precision. Jung referred to this as the persona, the carefully chosen face you present to the outside world so that your deeper shadow can continue working effectively behind the scenes. Nietzsche described it as the refined art of the actor who understands the stage of life. The Stoics taught a similar discipline using different language. Learn to control perfectly what you reveal and master completely what you choose to keep concealed. Underlying psychology here is both brutal and strangely elegant at the same time. The moment you stop desperately needing everyone to like and approve of your raw, unfiltered self, you suddenly become free to consciously craft the version of you that others need to see in order to respect you. This isn't about deceiving people for cheap thrills or sport. It's about intelligently protecting what actually matters most, your inner peace, your long-term goals, and the people you truly care about. And this is exactly where the lesson starts to feel very personal for you. Right now, as these words sink in, you might be thinking to yourself, but I don't want to become fake or manipulative. That's actually a good and healthy reaction, because this mindset isn't about turning into someone artificial. It's about finally becoming deliberate in how you show up in the world. The ordinary man simply reacts emotionally to whatever happens around him. The dangerous man learns to choose, with calm precision, exactly what reaction he wants to create in other people. In the end, the mask you learn to wear isn't about hiding your true identity forever. It becomes the powerful way you reveal exactly who you have consciously decided to become. This next layer is the one most men quietly avoid confronting, because looking directly at the war that rages inside every man is often far more difficult and uncomfortable than facing any external enemy. You genuinely want to be a good person. You really do. You want to be the kind of son your mother could always feel proud of, the loyal partner who never causes unnecessary pain, the reliable friend who shows up without fail. At the same time, you also crave real respect. You want tangible results in your life, and above all, you're exhausted from feeling invisible in rooms where you know you have something valuable to offer. The dangerous man learns to choose with calm precision exactly what reaction he wants to create in other people. In the end, the mask you learn to wear isn't about hiding your true identity forever. It becomes the powerful way you reveal exactly who you have consciously decided to become. This next layer is the one most men quietly avoid confronting, because looking directly at the war that rages inside every man is often far more difficult and uncomfortable than facing any external enemy. You genuinely want to be a good person. You really do. You want to be the kind of son your mother could always feel proud of, the loyal partner who never causes unnecessary pain, the reliable friend who shows up without fail. At the same time, you also crave real respect. You want tangible results in your life, and above all, you're exhausted from feeling invisible in rooms where you know you have something valuable to offer. Machiavelli didn't waste time morally judging this internal conflict. He simply observed it with cold clarity. A man who tries to make a profession of being good in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good. Nietzsche has pushed the idea even further, arguing that the will to power is not inherently evil. It is simply the fundamental driving force of all life itself. The Stoics offered a practical shield for this battle. Learn to fully accept the things you cannot control, while ruthlessly mastering the things you can. But the real lifelong art lies in developing the wisdom to know exactly which is which in any given moment. That inner war often plays out in your mind like this during sleepless nights at 2 a.m. I should probably just let this one go and keep the peace. But if I keep doing that, they will keep walking all over me again and again. I don't want to turn into that cold, calculating guy everyone whispers about. Yet I'm so tired of being the guy who always ends up with nothing. That uncomfortable tension you feel. It isn't a sign of moral failure or personal brokenness. It is actually the fertile birthplace where real mastery and personal power are born. The man who eventually becomes dangerous doesn't murder or destroy the good man living inside him. Instead, he learns to make both sides work together as allies. He develops the intelligence to know exactly when to embody the strength and courage of the lion, and when to move with the cleverness and patience of the fox. He still feels the guilt and the moral weight, and yet he chooses to act anyway when it matters, not because he has become heartless, but because he has finally understood a deeper truth. Sometimes protecting your own peace, your boundaries, and your future requires you to become the very storm that others have learned to respect and fear. This crossroads is precisely where the majority of men decide to turn back to safety. The ones who become unstoppable, they walk straight into that internal war without flinching, and they eventually emerge with both sides of their nature fully integrated and far more powerful than before. The shift that changes everything doesn't arrive with dramatic lightning bolts, heroic music, or grand public speeches. It almost always happens in the smallest, quietest, and most private moment imaginable. Picture this. You're sitting in an ordinary conversation. Someone makes a subtle comment that disrespects you, nothing loud or obvious, just enough to test whether you will fold and shrink again. In the past, your automatic response would have been to smile awkwardly, quickly change the subject, and later tell yourself it really wasn't worth the conflict. But this time, something feels noticeably different. You notice the old familiar instinct to appease and smooth things over rising up inside your chest. Instead of automatically following it like you always have, you make a deliberate choice. You pause. You hold steady eye contact without aggression. You allow 3 full uncomfortable seconds of silence to hang in the air. Then, when you finally speak, your voice comes out calm, low, and carrying zero trace of apology or hesitation, and just like that, the entire energy in the room changes in a way you can almost physically feel. That single pause was your personal turning point. Machiavelli would have recognized it immediately as the moment you stopped volunteering to play the role of prey in your own story. Jung would say your shadow had finally stepped forward and shaken hands with your conscious everyday self in a moment of powerful integration. The Stoics would have simply given a quiet nod of approval. In that instant, you chose inner virtue and self-respect over temporary comfort. In that brief second, you finally touched the most liberating and slightly terrifying truth of adulthood. No one was ever quietly coming to save you or hand you the respect you wanted. No external force was going to magically grant you power. You had to reach out and claim it for yourself with calm intention. And here's the surprisingly beautiful part most people never expect. Once you claim it even once, you quickly realize it was never quite as heavy or dangerous as your fears had made it seem. The world doesn't suddenly collapse around you. People don't turn against you in anger. In fact, they often begin to respect you more than they ever did before. That is exactly when the ordinary man begins his quiet transformation into someone dangerous. It's the moment you deeply understand that real power was never waiting somewhere outside of you. It had been patiently waiting all along for the exact second when you finally decided to stop asking the world for permission to use it. The kind of respectful fear we're talking about here isn't the terror that makes people run away. It's that subtle, almost magnetic hesitation you create in others. The moment when they become slightly unsure of exactly what you might do next, and they choose their words and actions more carefully around you as a result. You don't manufacture this effect by raising your voice, making threats, or acting aggressively. You create it by learning to become unpredictable in the most calm and controlled manner possible. It shows up as a well-timed strategic silence when others expect you to fill the space nervously. It appears as a firm but polite no delivered without explanation, when everyone around you assumes you will say maybe or yes to keep things easy. It can even look like a sincere compliment that feels completely genuine, immediately followed by a clear boundary that lands with the quiet strength of steel. Over time, people begin to orbit around you more naturally, because they realize they can no longer read you completely, and that very mystery becomes strangely magnetic and compelling. Machiavelli advised the princes of his era to strive to be both loved and feared simultaneously when possible. In today's world, the principle translates into something even more practical: become the man whose reactions must be genuinely earned, never casually assumed or taken for granted. Pay close attention, and you'll start to notice the subtle shifts happening around you. The friend who used to interrupt you constantly now finds himself waiting patiently for you to finish speaking. The colleague who once dismissed your ideas without a second thought now makes a point of asking for your opinion before making decisions. Even the person who once placed you firmly in the friend zone begins to look at you with different eyes, not because you started chasing them harder, but precisely because you stopped chasing entirely and started valuing your own time and energy. This process isn't cheap manipulation or games. It represents influence operating at its purest and most sophisticated psychological level. You simply stopped performing for approval. You began consciously deciding how you wanted situations to unfold, And the world, which has always been wired on a deep biological level to notice and follow genuine strength, quietly begins to adjust itself and follow your lead instead. Not because you suddenly became louder or more dramatic, but because you have finally become, in a very quiet and steady way, completely in control of yourself. True self-mastery has nothing to do with turning yourself into an emotionless machine. It's about becoming the calmest, most centered person present in almost any room you enter, because you have already done the difficult work of winning the bigger war that was happening inside you all along. You begin practicing emotional detachment, not as cold indifference, but as crystal clear awareness. You still feel every emotion fully and deeply, but you now consciously choose what you reveal, and when you also develop the skill of calculated vulnerability, sharing just enough of yourself to create real human connection, yet never so much that others can use it to control or weaken you, you start observing and studying people the same way Machiavelli once studied the great figures of history, not to judge them morally, but to understand with precision exactly what moves them, what they fear, and what they truly desire beneath their words. Each morning, you make one small but meaningful decision that quietly proves to yourself you are no longer a slave to your old automatic patterns. You say the slightly uncomfortable truth when it matters. You hold a boundary even when it feels awkward. You choose to walk away from situations or people that no longer serve your growth or peace. And slowly, almost without fanfare, the dangerous man stops feeling like a temporary mask you put on for protection. He gradually becomes who you actually are at your core. Nietzsche's vision of the Übermensch wasn't about becoming some invincible superhero above humanity. He was describing the rare individual who finally creates his own values and standards instead of endlessly borrowing them from a fearful society. You step into that same freedom through hundreds of small, private daily choices that almost no one else ever sees or applauds. The eventual result of this quiet process is profound. You become the kind of man that no one can easily stop or derail, because no one can reliably predict you, emotionally pressure you, or successfully guilt you into shrinking yourself back down to a smaller size ever again. You are no longer dangerous in a way that harms others unnecessarily. Instead, you have finally become safe, deeply and powerfully safe within yourself. This powerful mindset doesn't simply disappear the moment you finish watching this video. It continues to echo quietly inside every single choice you make from this day forward. You will still occasionally feel the old familiar pull trying to drag you back toward the safer, smaller version of yourself, the perpetual nice guy, the endlessly accommodating guy, the one who stays invisible so others feel comfortable. But now, running underneath that old voice, you will begin to hear a new one, quieter, steadier, and significantly stronger. It's the voice that has finally learned to tell the clear difference between genuine kindness and self-abandonment. Machiavelli, Jung, Nietzsche, and the Stoic philosophers didn't write their words primarily for kings, emperors, or extraordinary figures. They wrote them for men exactly like you, ordinary men who had grown tired of pretending, tired of shrinking, and who were finally ready to become dangerous in the only way that truly matters, dangerous to their own limiting excuses and self-sabotaging habits. The wider world will continue to hand out quick rewards to the loudest, the flashiest, and the most obviously aggressive. But the individuals who truly last, the ones who shape their own lives and quietly influence history from the shadows, are almost always the ones who have patiently mastered this ancient, subtle mindset. You don't need to transform yourself into someone ruthless or cruel. You simply need to stop volunteering to remain harmless in a world that rarely protects the harmless for long. And right there, in that important distinction, lies everything that actually matters. If this video has made you feel truly seen for the first time in a long while, then you already understand the deeper truth on some level. You have always carried this quiet potential inside you. The only missing piece was finally giving yourself permission to wake it up and use it wisely. You are not broken. You are not excessively nice in a bad way. You are not hopelessly behind everyone else. You are simply in the process of waking up to a more powerful and authentic version of yourself, normalizing that inner conflict you've carried, that quiet hunger for real respect, that deep desire to finally matter and be taken seriously. Doesn't make you a darker or worse person, it simply makes you profoundly and beautifully human. And more importantly, it makes you genuinely ready for what comes next. If anything in these words spoke directly to something buried deep inside you, here's one small thing you can do right now for all the other men who might be scrolling late at night, feeling the same quiet ache. Leave a simple comment below with the single word or short phrase that hit you the hardest today. Somewhere out there, another man sitting alone at 2 a.m. desperately needs to know he isn't alone in this struggle. If you want more of these calm, honest psychological explorations that actually shift how you show up and move through your daily life, consider subscribing. The next video might just be the one that finally helps set you free in ways you haven't even imagined yet. Take care of yourself. You deserve clarity. You deserve real growth. And above all, you deserve to become the man you were always capable of being.